2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Reback Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Reback Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand. And here's a photograph of my boat just after I finish putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. This will be the first time I've ever bothered to do a video of what I'm up to, but this week's been a bit of a pain. I hurt my neck and my shoulder using a Dremel tool to get out the Sikaflex out of the windows. But I digress. I started the week with the thought of doing the Plexiglass windows, removing the Sikaflex, the black goo from around the windows, and getting the windows out and cleaning up the window frames, and then putting the Plexiglass back in. And as I was doing that, I realised that the water leak was not coming from there, it was actually coming from the decking, the top deck. And that's another project, another major project for way down the track. So my 2 months on the hard is turning into much more. So other than repairing the hatch, I decided to put in a storm cover. And this was my original design. Then I thought about making a Plexiglass design, and it wasn't wide enough, so then I stuck them together. Unfortunately, they're not flexible enough and they don't hold in place. So then I decided to make, out of Davini cell that was left over, make these covers on a slide angle. They're not even half finished, but they work much better. They actually push into place better. So I'll round out with the sand of these edges and get a better shape and see whether that works, and if it works then I'll clean them up, sand them back, prime them and paint them. The hatch covers needed tender loving care, they were fragile, and so I've epoxied them up and given them more strength. You can see in here the epoxy, and I'll clean them up again and prime them and paint them and put them back into place. I began to remove the large hatches from above the galley and lounge area, only to realise that they weren't the source of my water leaks. It was actually the top deck itself. Underneath the solar panels there was lots of little holes. I stopped what I was doing and covered them with blue plastic and tape, and went back to doing the Sikaflex on the side windows of the upper deck. So the major problem before I hurt my shoulder and neck was to remove the black Sikaflex from around the gap between the deck and the Plexiglass windows. And here you can see me using a screwdriver to lift the black Sikaflex out of that groove. Initially I used the Stanley knife to cut above and below that Sikaflex, and I cut down until as far as I could get without cutting into the fiberglass decking, and then I used the screwdriver to lift the Sikaflex out of the area. So you can see myself using a Stanley knife to separate the Plexiglass from the Sikaflex, and that worked a treat. Because my wife is much smaller than me, much smaller than I, she got up on top of the cabin roof in the galley area, and using both the Stanley knives and other tools began to remove the Sikaflex from the inside of the windows. Then I realised it was a very slow process, so I taped up the windows on both the outside and the inside and began to use a Dremel tool to... It was incredibly hard work in 30 degrees heat outside on the deck and even inside. But we covered up the windows each night with plastic to stop the rain from getting in. And here's a shot of the plastic from the inside of the boat. And then we went back to using the Dremel tool to dig out both the inside and the outside underneath the glass, and removing the windows from the frames. After a lot of research, I decided on 3M double-sided tape, 50 millimeters wide by 2.5 millimeters thick. I measured it with this micrometer, and I also purchased Sikaflex 291, which is also a polyurethane product, to seal the gap between the plexiglass window and the window frame. Here's my wife chiseling out, or using a Stanley knife to get out that black Sikaflex that dried up and cracked and leaked. And this job was so difficult that we ended up using different types of tools, hand tools, and then gave up on that. So I went and bought a flat sander, which made the job 4 times easier than it was before. And it actually cleaned it up really well. We still had a lot more to do, and we began to notice all the cracks and fiberglass come loose, and a bit of rot, and the areas where the rain had been actually coming through. We also found that where they drilled and screwed attachments to the inside of the window frames, they'd used standard steel instead of stainless steel, which was really quite annoying because it was rusting and causing a bit of problem as well. The other thing we found was the manufacturer, when they put the trim on the inside of the window frame, they just cut the hole and didn't seal the foam core, and the water was getting down into the foam core and then seeping right down through the whole boat and saturating the foam core. Then Linda and I removed the residue Sikaflex from the inside edge of the plexiglass and cleaned it right up, and it will be ready for the 3M double-sided tape when that arrives. Here you can see we've used the actual plexiglass to hold the plastic in place, so when the rain and wind comes up, we don't get more water inside the boat. And it seems to have worked so far. Even in winds up to 20 knots, it's holding in place. So while we're waiting on the 291 and the 3M double-sided tape, we started on other projects. As I said, I injured my neck and shoulder. I must have pinched a nerve, and the Dremel tool didn't help, the vibration. So just for precautions, I used the neck brace. And of course the rehabilitation process is definitely a swim in the pool now that the MCO lockdown has opened the pool up again and the restaurant's working. Because the engines hadn't been started for 7 months, I noticed water in the fuel tanks and in the fuel filters and water separator. So I got Anderson Marine Services, Robbie Anderson, to come out and assist me with a few things because of my neck injury. He also gave me great advice. I used my fuel polisher to remove the 100 litres of fuel into 5 20-litre containers. In each cabin, starboard and port, underneath the mattress, is this, or 2 inspection hatches, and a surprise awaits. The diesel fuel tanks are on port and starboard sides, and both of them have water leaking inside them. See the red gasket goo? Well, that's not the correct gasket goo, but the shape of the tank means it creates a valley in the plastic tank, and that goo has sprung a leak, and the water sits in the gully and leaks into the tank. The surprise was that the plywood flooring is full of rot, which adds to my workload, and that drives me silly. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. 4 out of the 8 bilge covers have plywood that was never sealed properly, and it has come adrift with the soaking up of the water. So that's another job. So what I did is I used my fuel polisher to suck the fuel out into 6 containers. You can see that the diesel fuel is a milky colour and not a clear colour similar to urine. That's a joke, but it does look like urine. It smells like diesel. The other thing I found, which adds to my grief, is this looks like I've got water leaks in the hot water system. So that really peeves me off as well. I'm thinking of eliminating that because they're not cheap. So you can see that I've removed the fuel tank from its cradle. I've removed the fuel tanks and brought them back down underneath the boat, and I'll put them on the bench and start work on them. And basically I will remove the stainless steel mechanical side of the fuel tank and remove that rubbishy gasket goo that in fact melted and went into the fuel system. So it was the wrong gasket goo. So that's the next job, removing that and cleaning out the tanks, putting in a proper gasket goo and putting that assembly back into place. And because I don't know whether you can see it, but the fuel tank has a bulge, an indentation. It sags in the middle where the stainless steel mechanism is fitted, and the water settles in there and leaks through the cracks of the gasket goo into the tank. So I started one project on the windows and the Sikaflex and ended up with 3 or 4 more jobs, and some of them quite big, and that really peeves me off. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of part 22 of my all-out progress report on Rebek Island shipyard in Langkawi, Malaysia.